morning.
Good morning.
The scripture reading this morning is from Isaiah chapter 60, verses 1 through 6. Arise, shine, your light has come. The Lord's glory has shone upon you. Though darkness covers the earth and gloom the nations, the Lord will shine upon you. God's glory will appear over you. Nations will come to your light and kings to your dawning radiance. Lift up your eyes and look all around. They are all gathered. They have come to you. Your sons will come from far away, and your daughters on caregivers' hips. Then you will see and be radiant. Your heart will tremble and open wide, because the sea's abundance will be turned over to you. The nation's wealth will come to you. Countless camels will cover your land, young camels from Midian and Ephah. They will all come from Sheba, carrying gold and incense, proclaiming the Lord's praises. And the sermon text is from 2 Kings chapter 5, verses 1 through 14. Naaman, a general for the king of Aram, was a great man and highly regarded by his master, because through him the Lord had given victory to Aram. This man was a mighty warrior, but he had a skin disease. Now Aramean raiding parties had gone out and captured a young girl from the land of Israel. She served Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, I wish that my master could come before the prophet who lives in Samaria. He would cure him of his skin disease. So Naaman went and told his master what the young girl from the land of Israel had said. Then Aram's king said, Go ahead, I will send a letter to Israel's king. So Naaman left. He took along 10 kikars of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 changes of clothing. He brought the letter to Israel's king. It read, Along with this letter, I'm sending you my servant Naaman, so you can cure him of his skin disease. When the king of Israel read the letter, he ripped his clothes. He said, What? Am I God to hand out death and life? But this king writes me, asking me to cure someone of his skin disease. You must realize that he wants to start a fight with me. When Elijah, the man of God, heard that Israel's king had ripped his clothes, he sent word to the king. Why did you rip your clothes? Let the man come to me, then he'll know that there's a prophet in Israel. Naaman arrived with his horses and chariots. He stopped at the door of Elijah's house. Elijah sent out a messenger who said, Go and wash 7 times in the Jordan River, then your skin will be restored and become clean. But Naaman went away in anger. He said, I thought for sure that he'd come out, stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, wave his hand over the bad spot and cure the skin disease. Aren't the rivers in Damascus, the Abana, and the Pharpar better than all Israel's waters? Couldn't I wash in them and get clean? So he turned away and proceeded to leave in anger. Naaman's servants came up to him and spoke to him. Our father, if the prophet had told you to do something difficult, wouldn't you have done it? All he said to you was, Wash and become clean. So Naaman went down and bathed in the Jordan 7 times, just as the man of God had said. His skin was restored like that of a young boy, and he became clean. That's the end of reading.
All right, thank you, Marge. So I titled this sermon, B-list celebrities. So it seems like a lot of game shows nowadays always have a celebrity edition. You know, we have Celebrity Jeopardy, Celebrity Wheel of Fortune, and Celebrity Family Feud. And, you know, I find at times when it seems like there's nothing on, I'll flip through the channels and be like, oh, yeah, all right, let's watch this. Someone and I will watch it. And a lot of times we're like, and we're supposed to know who this person is, this celebrity. Like, I have no clue. And so trying to figure out like who this person is, or even the shows that are based on celebrities like Dancing with the Stars. I'd say 9 out of 10 times I'm like, I have no idea who this person is. Am I supposed to know who that is? Anyone else with me on this? Yeah. I'm like, well, what is the deal here? Like, I'm supposed to know who this person is. So these are like your B, even C list celebrities. You know, A-listers, of course, everybody knows who that is. You know, we see their picture, like, oh yeah, I know who that person is. I love their movies or whatever, and they're in. We recognize those. It's the B-listers are kind of like, But maybe if you see their face, you're like, they look familiar. I think they played a bad guy in a show I like to watch or something like that. So I chose B-listers because these are names that maybe you wouldn't recognize necessarily in the Bible, but maybe you've heard the story. And then B because B for Bible. So you see where I'm going here? The B. All right, good. So today's B-lister is Naaman. So when Margie read this sermon text, maybe you didn't recognize the name Naaman at first, but you're like, oh yeah, I've read this before. I've heard that story, or I've heard sermons on this. Or maybe you're like, I had no idea who Naaman is, and I've never heard this before, and that's great. Because then you're excited to hear about Naaman's life, right? You're excited to hear about this and be something totally new today. So I want to take a closer look at who it was Naaman and what we can learn from his story. So, first off, who is Naaman? Well, it says he was a general for the king of Aram, so a great warrior and highly regarded by his master. So Aram would be the country of Syria. So it borders Israel to the north and to the west. Yeah, north and to the west of Israel. So close by. And Naaman, it says, was highly regarded by the king because through him, the Lord gave him a great victory. We heard that in verse 1. So we see that it's not just the people in Israel that are worshiping God. It's people in the surrounding areas too. They're followers of God. They're practicing in worship that the Israelites are doing as well. And so God's favor isn't just on the people in Israel or Judah. It's also on the surrounding areas as well. God said the Lord gave Naaman favor, and he won the victory. So we see that it's the surrounding areas as well. And then also a key detail to who Naaman is in this story says he has a skin disease. Now often the Bible would translate this skin disease as leprosy in many different translations. Now, it doesn't specifically say leprosy, but that was a common skin disease back then. Very, very fatal, very highly contagious. But it doesn't say this exactly. Leprosy was kind of that catch-all term. So it probably wasn't leprosy, but it was something that was pretty bad. And being a practicer of the faith, follower of God, this would make him ritually unclean. So he'd want to get rid of that so he could fully participate in worship. So whatever this skin disease was, it was a cause of concern for Naaman. And this young girl, who happens to be the servant of Naaman's wife, says, oh, if only my master could go visit the prophet in Israel, he would cure him of his disease. Well, how did this young girl know such information? Well, it says she was captured from Israel on a raiding party and then would have been sold into slavery. So think about what she's saying from an outside perspective. So here's Naaman. He knows how this young girl came to be in his household. And she's sharing this information. He's like, oh, probably wants to believe that, but he's like, well, I know how you got here, and, Israel's a big area. Did you actually meet Elisha? Or did you actually witness him actually healing somebody? Or is it's just a big story of his legend, so to speak, that you heard about? And so he's really taken a lot of risk and faith into stepping out of this. But he's willing to trust what she says. So he takes this information to the king. The king says, oh yeah, go. In fact, I'm going to write you a letter specifically to the king of Israel asking him to heal you. So he gets the letter and he decides to take off. Now this is how bad Naaman really wanted to be healed. Listen to what he brings along with him. It says he loaded up 10 kickers of silver. So silver and gold were measured by weight as far as its worth. So that 10 kickers of silver would have been 750 pounds. Plus he brought along 6,000 shekels of gold, another 150 pounds. That's a lot of silver and gold. So obviously he was willing to pay whatever price it took to get healed. Give it to whoever. And then he packs everything up and he heads to Israel and he goes to the palace and he hands the king of Israel the letter from his king in Aram. And then when the king of Israel reads it, he's like, what? Who guy I think I am? Am I God that I can heal, that I can bring life or death for someone? And so he's so distressed, and he doesn't know what to do. That he says he rips his clothes. So ripping your clothes was a symbol that you were in grief, you were in distress, you didn't know what to do. And he's like, why is this guy coming? What's this king thinking? Send him to me. If I don't do something, he's trying to start trouble with me. He wants to start a fight with us. Being a neighboring country, they're probably used to having fighting in between them. In fact, how do you think that girl ended up being there? She was captured in a raiding party. So he doesn't want to start a war over this, so he has no idea what to do. There's a lot of assumptions, too, by the king of Aram when he sends this letter. I think that, things with Elisha and the king of Israel, they must be like this, right? The prophet, they must be really close and tight-knit, which that was definitely not the case. They were not simpatico or, on the same page. They were not in good terms at all. So when Elisha hears that the king tore his clothes, he knew what that meant. So he sends a message to him, like, why did you do that? What's going on? And then he says to the king, don't worry, just send him over to my house. Don't worry about all that, just send him on over to my house. Take care of it. So here's Naaman now. He's like, okay, I go over to the prophet's house. Here's where he is. Great. It's finally going to happen. I've come all this way. I got all this stuff. I'm ready. Going to get healed. This is great. So he shows up to Elisha's house. Be him, his party, their horses, their chariots, the whole shebang. And they go out there, but instead of Elisha actually coming out to greet him, he just sends out a messenger. And the messenger says, yeah, you see that river over there? Go dip yourselves in it 7 times and you'll be healed. And that was it. And Naaman's like, what? What is this? I rode all this way and he can't even come out of his house. He can't even come, at least meet me. Instead, he sends a messenger to give me the message. And he wants to go over that dirty river. It was again in verse 11 and 12. But Naaman went away in anger. He said, I thought for sure that he'd come out and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God and wave his hand over the bad spot and cure the disease. Aren't the rivers in Damascus, the Abana, and the Parfar better than any of Israel's waters? Couldn't I wash in them and get clean? And he was ready to take off. So he turned away in anger and he was ready to saddle up and head on back home. Because he had this idea in his head what would take place. He thought for sure that Elisha would come out, at least meet me, but then he would do something, like kind of wave his hand over the area and be like, all right, boom, it's done. You're healed, all right. No, he says, go over to that river and wash yourself, dip yourself in it 7 times, and you'll be healed. And he's just ready to pack it all up and take off. Basically, he's lost faith. His faith bombs are there, but he's lost all faith. He's ready to head home. And then who is it that actually has the faith for him to stay? It's his servant. His servant says to him, well, wait a minute. You came all this way, and what you're expecting him to do all this, but he didn't. But what if he expected you to do something difficult? Then wouldn't you have done it? If he said, all right, I want you to cross your legs and sit there for 7 hours and put all this stuff on your head. And if he said to do all this elaborate stuff, you probably would have done that, right? But what he said seemed awful simple, really easy, and it wasn't anything that you expected it to be, and you're willing to pack that up and head back. At least give it a try. How often do we expect some labor-intensive process, for God to give us what we're desiring, for God to give us what we want? We expect that we got all these hoops we got to jump through, right? We got to do all this stuff. Oh, it just can't be that easy. No, there must be more to it than that. We got to do all this. But Naaman, he followed through with what Elisha's message was to him. He did it and he was healed. Why 7 times? When numbers show up in the Bible, there's certain numbers you need to kind of pay attention to. 7 being one of them. And whenever 7 appears in the Bible, it actually is the number of perfection. or completion. So 7 meant that you need to follow that through to get to the completion, to the healing, to that perfection. But what if after, like, let's say 3 or 4 times of, dunking himself in the water and coming back up, Naaman said, you know what, this is ridiculous. I'm just out here looking like a fool, getting wet in this dirty, smelly river, and for what? I still look the same. I feel the same. Nothing's changed. What if he only made it about halfway through and just said, forget it. I'm throwing in the towel. Would he have gotten his healing? No. No, he had to follow that all the way through, and he did it. So there's something in the story of Naaman that you can relate to. Something that has happened. Maybe when we get instructions from God that seem way too specific and almost way too easy, it's like, oh, no, that can't be all there is. Salvation? You just got to believe and trust? No, there's got to be way more to it than that, right? I must have to do something. I must have to work on this or that. And especially when you have these expectations of how God's going to do something and it doesn't go the way you think at all. The answer you get back from God is totally different than what you had your expectation on. So like if God told me to go down to Swinswood Park and jump in the Shell Rock River 7 times, would I do it? I'd be like, no way. Like, can't I just wait for the pool to open? The water's much nicer and cleaner there. Would the pool just work? Couldn't I just do that? Not that stinky river. I know what swims in there. I don't want to jump in there. Couldn't I just do one of those? Or those times when we have doubts about our faith, when we question things of God, and we're ready to say, forget it, and just move on. But then someone comes along, like Naaman's servant, and says, no, stick with it. Hang in there. They give you those words of encouragement, those words of exhortation that would be like, you are just special. You are loved by God. Don't turn your back on that. Don't deny that. So when they speak these things to you, do you listen or do you ignore what they say? Where do we find ourselves in this story? So I hope that this Naaman story, the story of faith, can be something of encouragement and speak to you that don't give up, don't throw in the towel. Hang in there with things of God, even when it doesn't make sense and it's hard to understand. Stick with it, keep the faith. Amen.